I was dying in the hospital when the doctors called my daughter. Her response? "I'm busy, it's my husband's birthday." I could hear party music in the background while machines kept me alive. For 30 years, I'd given Rebecca everything. Worked 2 jobs after my wife died, saved every penny for her college, bought her a house. I thought I'd raised a grateful daughter. I was wrong. But here's what Rebecca didn't know. I was recording that call, and I still owned everything she thought was hers. My name is Landon Hamilton, and I've been a warehouse supervisor for 26 years. 3 days later, I made a decision that would change both our lives forever. But before I tell you what I did next, let me know in the comments. Where are you listening from, and what time is it there? And make sure to hit subscribe because this story gets intense. The story really starts 28 years ago on the worst day of my life. My wife Catherine was dying of breast cancer, her body ravaged by months of chemotherapy that hadn't worked. Rebecca was only 12 years old, sitting by her mother's hospital bed, holding her cold, thin hand. Catherine's voice was barely a whisper when she looked at me with those tired green eyes and said, "Promise me you'll give her everything, Landon. Promise me she'll never want for anything. Promise me she'll have the life I'll never get to give her." I squeezed my wife's fingers, feeling how fragile they'd become. "I promise, sweetheart. I swear on my life, on our love, on everything we've built together. Rebecca will have everything." That promise became my religion, my daily prayer, my reason for existing. After Catherine passed 3 weeks later, I threw myself into work like a man possessed. Double shifts at the warehouse loading dock, weekend construction jobs, holiday overtime, anything to keep that promise alive. Rebecca needed dance lessons when she turned 13. I picked up Saturday shifts for 6 months. She wanted to go to summer camp with her friends. I ate peanut butter sandwiches for lunch every day and saved the money I would have spent on decent meals. Her high school required expensive textbooks. I sold Catherine's jewelry, except for her wedding ring, which I kept on a chain around my neck. Every sacrifice felt like honoring Catherine's memory. Every dollar I saved for Rebecca felt like keeping my wife alive somehow. When Rebecca cried about not having the right clothes for school dances, I'd work extra hours until I could afford whatever she needed. When she wanted a car for her 16th birthday, I spent 8 months doing weekend demolition work, coming home with hands so raw and bleeding that I had to wrap them just to hold a fork. But I never complained. Never let Rebecca see how exhausted I was. Never let her know that I was surviving on 4 hours of sleep and gas station coffee most days. Catherine had asked me to give Rebecca everything, and I was going to keep that promise if it killed me. Rebecca graduated summa cum laude from State University with a degree in marketing. $85,000 in tuition I'd scraped together, penny by penny, overtime hour by overtime hour. I sat in that auditorium watching my daughter walk across the stage in her cap and gown, thinking about all the times I'd fallen asleep, standing up at work because I'd been pulling double shifts to pay for her education. She looked so beautiful, so accomplished, so proud. When she hugged me afterward, tears streaming down both our faces, she whispered, "Thank you, Daddy. I love you so much. I know how hard you worked for this." Those were the last completely genuine words my daughter would speak to me for years. I just didn't know it yet. Within 6 months, she'd landed a good job at a marketing firm downtown. Starting salary of $45,000 a year, more money than I'd ever seen at once. I was so proud of her success, so relieved that the financial pressure would finally ease up. But then Rebecca met Mark at some corporate networking event. Investment banker, 6-figure salary, expensive taste in everything from wine to watches. Suddenly my daughter, who used to love our Friday night pizza dinners, was too busy for family time. Our weekly phone calls became monthly check-ins. Our monthly check-ins became holiday obligations. "Daddy, Mark and I have plans," became her most used phrase. Plans that apparently never included the man who'd worked himself into chronic back pain to pay for her education. I watched my little girl transform into someone I didn't recognize. Designer clothes replaced her simple dresses. Expensive restaurants replaced our kitchen table conversations, a whole new vocabulary of things that were beneath her social circle now, including, apparently, warehouse supervisors who smelled like honest work at the end of the day. Mark had this way of looking at me during the rare occasions when I saw him, like I was some relic from Rebecca's past that she was politely tolerating, like I was an embarrassment she'd eventually outgrow completely. When Rebecca announced her engagement to Mark after dating him for barely 18 months, I was genuinely happy for her. I wanted my daughter to find love, to have the kind of partnership I'd had with Catherine. Mark seemed decent enough, even if he did have a tendency to check his phone during our conversations and make jokes about blue-collar wisdom. Daddy, Rebecca said during dinner at some expensive restaurant she'd chosen, Mark and I have been house hunting. We've found the perfect place, but everything in a good neighborhood is so expensive. The down payment alone is more than we can save in years. I didn't hesitate for even a second. How much do you need? Well, there's this gorgeous place in Willow Creek for $450,000. It has everything we want. The kitchen at the master suite, the yard for future kids. But we can't afford the down payment and closing costs, and I'll buy it, I said. Wedding gift. Rebecca's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. Really? Oh my God, Daddy, you're amazing. Mark, did you hear that? Daddy's gonna buy us the house. What I didn't tell Rebecca was that buying that house meant emptying my retirement account completely. Every dollar I'd saved for my old age gone in one generous gesture. What I also didn't tell her was something my lawyer, Tom Bradley, had mentioned during the paperwork process, keeping the house deed in my name for tax purposes and estate planning. Mr. Hamilton, Tom had said, given the significant investment you're making, I'd recommend structuring this as property with occupancy rights rather than an outright transfer. It protects your investment while still giving Rebecca the home she wants. Rebecca was so excited about picking out paint colors and planning the wedding that she barely glanced at the legal documents, just signed where I pointed, her attention already on fabric swatches and flower arrangements. This is so much easier than trying to get a mortgage, she'd laughed. I hate reading all that boring legal stuff anyway. I should have paid attention to that comment. I should have realized that someone who doesn't bother reading legal documents might not bother reading other important things, like the terms of family relationships. The joint bank account seemed like the natural next step. For emergencies, I explained to Rebecca as we sat in the bank manager's office. And for your future security, I want you to have access to resources if you ever need them. I deposited $340,000, literally every penny I had left after buying her house. 30 years of overtime pay, weekend construction work, holiday shifts, and careful saving. My entire financial life placed into an account with both our names on it. Rebecca could check the balance online, make withdrawals for emergencies, even set up automatic payments for her new mortgage and utilities. It felt like the ultimate expression of trust between father and daughter. What she didn't realize, what I barely understood myself at the time, was what the bank manager had quietly explained during the account setup process. Mr. Hamilton, since you're the primary account holder who made the initial deposit, you maintain what we call single signature authority. You can close this account or make major changes without requiring your daughter's consent or signature. I'd nodded along, not thinking much of it at the time. Why would I ever need to protect myself from my own daughter? Rebecca was the most important person in my world. The idea that I might someday need legal protection from her seemed absurd. The life insurance policy was another safety net I arranged during those hopeful early days of Rebecca's marriage. $500,000 with Rebecca as the sole beneficiary. When I'm gone, I told her as we left the insurance office, you'll never have to worry about money again. You can travel, start a family, buy whatever makes you happy. She'd hug me right there on the sidewalk. Don't talk like that, Daddy. You're going to live forever. Besides, I don't want your money. I want you around to spoil your future grandchildren. I'd believed her completely. Standing there in the sunshine with my daughter's arms around me, I'd felt like the luckiest father in the world. I'd kept my promise to Catherine. I'd given Rebecca everything, and she was grateful. How naive I was. During my will consultation with Tom Bradley, he was thorough to the point of being annoying. We spent 2 hours going over every detail, every contingency, every possible scenario. Mr. Hamilton, I want to include what we call a revocation clause in your will. It's a protection against beneficiaries who might not fulfill their familial obligations down the road. I actually laughed out loud. Tom, we're talking about my daughter. Rebecca would never abandon me. She's the most loving, caring person I know. Tom smiled diplomatically, the way lawyers do when they've seen too much of human nature. I'm absolutely sure you're right about Rebecca, but this clause is standard protection in cases involving substantial estates. It just ensures that inheritance rights remain contingent on maintaining appropriate family relationships. What would constitute grounds for revocation? I asked, more out of curiosity than concern. Abandonment during medical crises, refusal to provide reasonable care, documented disrespect or abuse, things like that. Extreme circumstances that would indicate a fundamental breakdown in the parent-child relationship. I signed the papers, thinking the whole thing was ridiculous legal paranoia. Rebecca abandoning me? Impossible. The joint account became Rebecca's personal funding source over the next 3 years, and I watched our shared savings disappear, bit by bit. $5,000 for a European vacation with Mark. We need this, Daddy. We work so hard and we never get to travel. $10,000 for Mark's investment opportunity in his friend's startup. This could make us rich, and then we can pay you back everything. $15,000 for upgrading their wedding reception because Mark's parents had expectations about the venue. But $20,000 for Rebecca's new car because the Honda was embarrassing when we had to drive clients around. Each time she called, her voice carried this edge I'd never heard before. Not exactly demanding, but certainly expecting. Like access to my life savings was just part of the natural order of things. Daddy, Mark and I really need this. You understand, right? We have a certain lifestyle to maintain now. Mark's colleagues all live a certain way, and if we want to fit in, we have to keep up appearances. I always said yes. Of course I did. I'd promised Catherine I'd give Rebecca everything she needed, but I started noticing things that made my chest feel tight with worry. The way Rebecca would sigh when I called, like I was interrupting something important. The way she'd cut our conversation short if Mark came home, or if they had social plans. The way she'd forgotten my birthday 2 years running, then called 3 days later with a distracted, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry, Daddy. We were just so busy with work stuff." The Christmas of 2019 was when I really understood how far things had shifted. I'd spent weeks preparing for their visit, bought a turkey, decorated the little apartment, even got Rebecca her favorite pie from the bakery across town. I'd imagined us sitting around my small table, talking and laughing like we used to when she was younger. Rebecca called Christmas Eve. "Daddy, I'm so sorry, but we can't make it tomorrow. Mark's family planned this amazing ski trip to Aspen, and it's been booked for months. I totally forgot to tell you." "But honey, we've had Christmas plans since Thanksgiving." I know, and I feel terrible, but Mark's parents spent a fortune on this trip, and it would be rude not to go. Christmas morning, I woke up in my small apartment, surrounded by silence so thick it felt like drowning. I'd set the table for 3 out of habit. Me, Rebecca, and Mark. The turkey I'd bought was too big for one person, but I cooked it anyway, filling the apartment with smells that reminded me of holidays when Catherine was alive and Rebecca was young. My phone stayed quiet until 6 p.m. when a text message arrived. "Merry Christmas, Daddy." "Sorry we couldn't make it. Mark's family had this amazing lodge and the snow was perfect. Love you tons." I stared at that text for over an hour, holding my phone with hands that shook slightly. Love you tons. Words that used to mean everything, now feeling like an afterthought typed between ski runs and expensive champagne. But the real punch to the gut came later that evening when I made the mistake of checking Facebook. There was Rebecca's page, filled with photos from Aspen. Designer ski gear, expensive lodge dinners, champagne toasts with Mark's family, and the caption that made my heart actually skip a beat. "Best Christmas ever with my chosen family." Chosen family, as if I'd been unchosen. 6 months later, I had my first real health scare. Sharp chest pains that started while I was watching TV, radiating down my left arm in a way that made me think immediately of Catherine's final heart attack. The pain was so intense that I couldn't catch my breath, couldn't think straight, couldn't do anything except reach for my phone with trembling fingers. I called Rebecca, genuinely terrified that I was about to die alone in my apartment. "Daddy, hi, what's up?" Her voice was bright and distracted, with background noise that sounded like a party or restaurant. "Honey, I'm having some serious chest pain. Sharp pains and my arm is numb. I think I might need to go to the hospital." A pause, during which I could hear music and laughter behind her. "Oh, well, can you call me back in a couple hours? Mark and I are at this spa weekend retreat thing. We paid a fortune for it, and we're right in the middle of the couples massage session." "Rebecca, I think I might be having a heart attack." "Daddy, you always think you're having a heart attack when you get anxious. Remember last year when it turned out to be gas? Just take some antacid and try to relax. Can we talk tomorrow?" The line went dead before I could explain that this felt different, that I was genuinely scared, that I needed my daughter to care whether I lived through the night. I sat there in my living room holding the silent phone, understanding something fundamental about my relationship with Rebecca for the first time. I wasn't her priority. I wasn't even a significant consideration. I was an obligation she'd get to when convenient. The chest pains turned out to be stress-related, not life-threatening. But something else died that night. My illusions about my daughter's love for me. I started thinking about things I'd ignored before. How Rebecca only called when she needed money. How she never asked about my health, my job, my loneliness. How she'd never invited me to their house for dinner, never included me in their social events, never acted like having a father was something to be proud of. I was 68 years old, and I was learning that my only child saw me as a financial resource, not a person worth caring about. The fancy restaurant incident happened 3 weeks after the chest pain scare. Rebecca had actually initiated contact, inviting me to dinner at some upscale place downtown. I was so excited by the rare invitation that I spent an hour getting ready, even bought a new shirt for the occasion. Maybe this was her way of apologizing for the spa weekend dismissal. Maybe she'd realized how badly she'd treated me and wanted to make things right. Maybe we could rebuild our relationship into something that honored Catherine's memory. I should have known better. When the maitre d' approached our table, Rebecca introduced me with a casual wave. "This is my old man Landon. He's paying tonight, so don't worry about running up the bill." Mark laughed like she'd made a clever joke. "Yeah, Rebecca's dad is pretty quaint. Old school work ethic, you know? Still believes in working with his hands and all that blue-collar stuff." The word quaint hit me like a physical slap. Quaint. Like I was some charming antique she kept around for entertainment. But here's what made the evening even more painful. Our waiter, a young man named David, recognized me from the warehouse district where I'd worked for over 2 decades. "Mr. Hamilton, it's so good to see you, sir. You're something of a legend down at Peterson Manufacturing. My Uncle Jimmy works 3rd shift there. He always talks about how you trained half the crew, how you'd stay late to help new guys learn the equipment safely." David treated me with genuine respect and warmth, more respect than my own daughter had shown me in years. He asked about my health, remembered that I'd helped his uncle get promoted to supervisor, even comped our dessert for one of the good ones. Meanwhile, Rebecca looked embarrassed by the interaction, like having a father with a working-class reputation was somehow shameful in front of the other upscale diners. When we left the restaurant, Rebecca didn't say a word about David's kindness or the respect he'd shown me. Instead, she complained about the awkward interruption and how people like that didn't understand appropriate boundaries in fine dining establishments. People like that. People like me. That night I did something I'd never done before. Something that felt like crossing a line, but curiosity finally won out over privacy concerns. I looked up Rebecca's Instagram account. I'd avoided social media for years, partly because I didn't understand it, and partly because I thought it was an invasion of my daughter's personal life. But I needed to understand who she'd become, needed to see how she presented herself to the world. What I found made my stomach turn and my hands shake with anger, Post after post of expensive restaurants, designer clothes, luxury vacations, all funded by withdrawals from our joint account. Photos of champagne that cost more than my weekly grocery budget, handbags worth more than my monthly rent, vacation resorts I couldn't afford even if I saved for years. But worse than the spending were the captions. Finally upgrading our social circle. Life's too short for cheap people and bad wine. Grateful to leave the past behind and embrace the life we deserve. The most recent post was a photo of a bottle of champagne that cost $200 with the caption, "Sometimes you have to cut dead weight to truly soar." Dead weight. Was that what I'd become to my daughter? Dead weight that needed cutting? I scrolled through months of posts, looking for any mention of me, any acknowledgement of the man who'd made her lifestyle possible. Nothing. I was completely invisible in her carefully curated online life. Her bio said, "Marketing professional, wife to Mark, living my best life." No mention of being anyone's daughter. I found photos from holidays I hadn't been invited to, celebrations I hadn't known about, achievements I hadn't been told of. Rebecca had an entire life that didn't include me, funded entirely by money I'd worked 30 years to save. The comments on her posts were from friends I'd never met, colleagues whose names I didn't recognize, people who knew Rebecca as this polished, successful woman with expensive tastes and unlimited funds. None of them had any idea that her lifestyle was built on her father's sacrifices. As I sat there in my small apartment, looking at pictures of my daughter living like a millionaire on my retirement money, I felt something shift inside me, something cold and final, like a door closing that would never open again. March 15th arrived with unseasonably warm weather and the promise of spring. Mark's 35th birthday. Rebecca had been planning the celebration for weeks, talking excitedly about the epic party they were throwing at some luxury resort about an hour outside the city. I knew all about it because she'd called me 2 weeks earlier, asking for yet another withdrawal from our joint account. "Just $8,000 this time, Daddy. I know it sounds like a lot, but this is Mark's milestone birthday, and we want to do something really special. We've rented this amazing private dining room at the Grandview Resort, hired a live jazz band, invited 40 people. It's going to be perfect. $8,000 for one birthday party, more than I spent on living expenses in 3 months. But I approved the withdrawal, like always, because saying no to Rebecca had become impossible for me somewhere along the way. What I couldn't have predicted was that by evening, I'd be fighting for my life in a hospital while Rebecca chose between her husband's birthday cake and her father's beating heart. The massive heart attack hit me around 7 p.m. while I was making dinner in my small kitchen. Not the stress-related chest pains I'd experienced before, this was the real thing. Sharp, crushing pain that felt like someone had wrapped steel bands around my chest and was tightening them with every breath. My left arm went completely numb. Cold sweat broke out across my forehead and down my back. The room started spinning, and I knew with terrible clarity that I was probably going to die. I managed to call 911 before collapsing onto my kitchen floor, vision tunneling, lungs struggling to pull in enough air to stay conscious. Mrs. Patterson, my elderly neighbor, heard me calling for help through the thin apartment walls and rushed over to stay with me until the ambulance arrived. In that ambulance, with paramedics working over me and sirens wailing, I did something that would change everything. Some instinct, maybe desperation, maybe paranoia, told me to activate the voice recording app on my phone and tuck it into my shirt pocket. I wanted evidence of whatever was about to happen. I'm so glad I listened to that instinct. At Riverside General Hospital, Dr. Martinez was direct and urgent. "Mr. Hamilton, you've suffered a massive heart attack. We're going to do emergency surgery, but first we need to contact your next of kin immediately." With hands that shook uncontrollably, I gave him Rebecca's phone number. My daughter, my only family, the person who should drop everything to be by my side during the worst crisis of my life. Dr. Martinez stepped into the hallway to make the call, and I could hear his side of the conversation through the thin emergency room curtains. My phone was still recording everything. "Miss Hamilton, This is Dr. Martinez at Riverside General Hospital. I'm calling about your father, Landon Hamilton. Yes, he's here in our emergency room. He suffered a massive heart attack, and we're preparing him for immediate surgery. I understand this is sudden, but we need you here as soon as possible. Your father could die tonight." And then I heard my daughter's voice, tinny but unmistakably clear through the doctor's phone speaker. "Look, doctor, I'm really busy right now. It's my husband's birthday celebration. Can't this wait until tomorrow? My dad's always having these dramatic health episodes. Last time it was just gas." Dr. Martinez tried again, his voice more urgent. "Ma'am, I need you to understand. This is not a minor health episode. Your father has had a major cardiac event. He's in critical condition and may not survive the night." Rebecca's response will haunt me for the rest of my life. "Okay, look, I'll try to stop by the hospital later tonight if I can. But we've spent a fortune on this party, and all of Mark's family is here from out of town, and honestly, it's just really bad timing. Can you just, I don't know, do whatever you need to do and call me if something actually serious happens?" Bad timing. I was dying, and my daughter thought it was bad timing. Dr. Martinez was quiet for a moment, clearly shocked by what he'd just heard. "Miss Hamilton, your father is about to go into emergency surgery. This is as serious as it gets." "Fine, whatever. Just handle it and send me the bills. I really have to go now." The line went dead. Dr. Martinez came back into my room, his face a mixture of professional composure and personal disgust. He didn't say anything about the call, but I could see the judgment in his eyes. Even a stranger could see that my daughter had just abandoned me. I survived the surgery. Barely. Dr. Martinez told me later that it had been touch and go for several hours, that they'd nearly lost me, twice on the operating table. But I was alive, hooked up to machines in the ICU, surrounded by the steady beeping of monitors and the antiseptic smell that brought back too many memories of Catherine's final days. The next afternoon, one of the nurses, a kind woman named Sarah, noticed that I seemed depressed beyond what was normal for heart attack patients. "Mr. Hamilton, is there anything we can do to make you more comfortable? Are you in pain?" I shook my head. The physical pain was manageable. The emotional pain was destroying me. "I called my daughter," I said quietly. "She was too busy to come." Sarah's face softened with sympathy. "I'm sure she'll be here soon. Sometimes people react strangely to medical emergencies. They get scared and—" "She's not scared," I said. "She's at a birthday party." Sarah looked confused, so I asked her to check something for me. "Could you look up Rebecca Hamilton on Instagram? I want to see what was so important." Sarah pulled out her phone and found Rebecca's account within minutes. What she showed me was worse than I'd imagined. Real-time posts from the night before, uploaded while I was being cut open to save my life. Photos of elaborate floral arrangements that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. A custom birthday cake shaped like a yacht. Champagne towers. Rebecca herself in a designer dress that sparkled under restaurant lighting. The timestamp on her last post, a video of Mark blowing out candles while everyone sang happy birthday, was 11:43 p.m., exactly when Dr. Martinez had called her the second time to tell her I was stable but needed family support. She'd been too busy filming her husband's birthday party to answer the phone when her father's life hung in the balance. But the caption on the cake video was what broke something inside me permanently. "Perfect night with perfect people. When you surround yourself with quality, life becomes magical." Quality people. I wasn't quality enough to interrupt her magical evening. I asked Sarah to scroll down through the previous posts, and what I saw there was systematic documentation of my daughter's transformation into someone I didn't recognize. 3:47 a.m. That's the exact moment when everything became crystal clear. I was wide awake in the ICU, surrounded by the quiet symphony of machines keeping me alive. The beeping of heart monitors, the soft hiss of oxygen, the distant sounds of nurses checking on other patients. My chest felt like it had been cracked open and reassembled, which wasn't far from the truth. But for the first time in years, my mind was completely clear. I did a mental inventory of everything I'd given Rebecca since Catherine's death. The house, $450,000 of my retirement savings, the joint account, $340,000 of my life's work, 30 years of overtime shifts, weekends lost, social life sacrificed, physical health damaged from overwork. For what? For a daughter who thought my heart attack was bad timing? For someone who posted about quality people while her father fought for his life? But then I remembered something Tom Bradley had said during the will consultation. Something about protective clauses and revocation rights. Something about how family relationships could change and legal documents needed to account for those possibilities. Catherine's voice echoed in my memory. Promise me you'll give her everything. But Catherine had made that request assuming Rebecca would grow into someone worthy of everything, someone who would love and respect and care for the man who sacrificed his entire life for her happiness. Catherine never imagined Rebecca would become someone who'd choose champagne and birthday cake over her dying father. And lying there in that hospital bed, listening to machines keep me alive, I realized something that felt like waking up from a 30-year dream. I'd kept my promise to Catherine. I had given Rebecca everything, every opportunity to become a loving, grateful, decent human being, every advantage money could buy, every sacrifice love could make. What Rebecca chose to do with those gifts was not my responsibility. The realization hit me like a revelation. Rebecca had no idea how much power I still held. She thought the house was hers because she lived there and paid the utilities. Wrong. Her name had never been on the deed. She thought the joint account required both our signatures for major changes. Wrong. I was the primary holder, with full control. She thought the will and insurance were permanent. Wrong again. I thought about the recording still saved on my phone. 3 minutes and 27 seconds of my daughter abandoning her dying father for a party. Clear, undeniable evidence of what lawyers call familial abandonment during medical crisis. Evidence that would justify every legal action I was about to take. The law protects people who honor their family obligations. It doesn't protect people who abandon them when it's inconvenient. At 4:15 a.m., I made the decision that would change both our lives forever. I was going to take back everything I'd given Rebecca. Not out of spite, not for revenge, but because she'd proven she didn't deserve it. She'd had 30 years to show gratitude, respect, basic human decency. Instead, she'd chosen entitlement, selfishness, and cruelty. Some people learn from generosity. Others learn only from consequences. It was time for Rebecca to learn about consequences. When I called Tom Bradley the next morning, his voice was immediately warm with concern. Landon, Mrs. Patterson called me about your heart attack. How are you feeling? Do you need anything? It struck me that my lawyer, who I paid by the hour, showed more genuine care than my own daughter had. I'm alive, Tom, but I need to discuss some urgent legal matters. Can you come to the hospital today? Of course. I'll be there this afternoon. Tom arrived at 2 p.m. with his briefcase and a very serious expression. He'd clearly prepared for this conversation based on what Mrs. Patterson had told him about Rebecca's absence from the hospital. Landon, before we talk legal matters, I have to ask, where is Rebecca? Mrs. Patterson said she wasn't here last night during your surgery. I pulled out my phone and played the recording of Dr. Martinez's call with Rebecca. All 3 minutes and 27 seconds of my daughter choosing a birthday party over her father's life. Tom's face went through a series of expressions as he listened. Professional surprise, personal disappointment, and finally the calculating look of a lawyer who recognizes a clear-cut case. Landon, this recording constitutes textbook evidence of familial abandonment during a medical crisis. In legal terms, it provides unassailable grounds for invoking all the revocation clauses we built into your estate planning. Explain exactly what that means, Tom. He opened his briefcase and pulled out several files. It means we can legally undo every gift, every transfer, every benefit you've provided to Rebecca. The house, the bank account, the insurance policy, the will, all of it can be reverted back to your exclusive control. My hands were trembling, but not from the heart medication. If I did this, if I revoked everything, would it hold up in court if Rebecca challenged it? Tom nodded gravely. With this recording as evidence? Absolutely. You have documented proof that she violated the most fundamental obligations of the parent-child relationship. Any judge would uphold these actions as justified and legally sound. How quickly can we make this happen? If you're certain about this decision, we can start the process today. The first stop was Riverside National Bank, where I'd held accounts for over 20 years. Tom had prepared all the necessary paperwork, but banking regulations required my physical presence and signature for major account changes. Mrs. Chen, the bank manager who'd helped me set up the joint account years earlier, looked genuinely uncomfortable as she processed my request. Mr. Hamilton, I need to confirm you're requesting closure of joint account ending in 4751, which currently contains $340,218. Your daughter has had access to this account for over 3 years. That's correct. I'm the primary account holder, and I want it closed immediately. Yes, sir, you do have that legal authority, but I'm required to inform you that your daughter will be notified immediately when her access is revoked, and any automatic payments she has set up will be declined, starting with the next business cycle. I thought about Rebecca's mortgage payment, her luxury car payment, her credit cards, all automatically drafted from our joint account. By tomorrow morning, her perfect life would start crashing down around her. Mrs. Chen, that's exactly what I want to happen. But Mrs. Chen typed for several long minutes, processing forms, transferring the full balance to a new account in my name only. $340,000, my entire life savings, was back under my exclusive control for the first time in years. Mr. Hamilton, the joint account closure is now complete and will be effective immediately. Any automatic payments or debit transactions your daughter attempts will be declined. She'll receive notification of the account closure within 24 hours. I signed the final paperwork and requested a printed statement showing the account closure and fund transfer, evidence I might need later. As we left the bank, Tom was quiet until we reached his car. Landon, that was the easy part. Are you prepared for what comes next? What comes next? Rebecca is going to call you, probably multiple times. She's going to be angry, confused, desperate. She'll likely promise to change, to be better, to make amends. Are you prepared to hold firm against that? I thought about the recording on my phone, about the Instagram posts from her magical evening while I was dying, about 30 years of increasing selfishness and entitlement. Tom, I'm prepared. Back at Tom's office, we tackled the will revision. The original will was simple. Everything to Rebecca, with Tom as executor. The new will was dramatically different and much more detailed. Landon, you want to designate Children's Hospital as your primary beneficiary? Catherine always said the best legacy was helping children who needed it, and there's something fitting about the money going to help kids whose parents would actually move heaven and earth to be with them during medical crises. Tom nodded approvingly as he made the changes in his computer system. What about your personal effects and any remaining property? Mrs. Patterson gets the personal items. She's been more of a family member to me in 5 years than Rebecca has been in 10. The house reverts to me immediately since Rebecca was never on the deed. She was essentially a tenant at will. How much notice does she legally need to vacate? Standard is 30 days, but given the circumstances and the documented abandonment, we could justify 15 days if necessary. Tom printed the new will, and I read through every word carefully before signing. Rebecca Hamilton, daughter, was now mentioned only in a clause, specifically explaining why she'd been disinherited. The insurance beneficiary change was straightforward, but emotionally significant. $500,000 that had been destined for Rebecca's future luxury lifestyle would now help sick children instead. The insurance agent, Mr. Peterson, processed the paperwork efficiently, but seemed curious about the sudden change. Mr. Hamilton, just to confirm for our records, you're removing Rebecca Hamilton as primary beneficiary and designating Children's Hospital of State City instead? That's correct. Any particular reason for the change? Sometimes our underwriters ask. I considered showing him the recording of Rebecca's abandonment, but decided simple honesty was sufficient. My daughter chose not to come to the hospital when I had a heart attack. She was too busy with a birthday party. Mr. Peterson's expression shifted from professional curiosity to human understanding. I see. I'm very sorry to hear that. The beneficiary change will be processed and effective immediately. As I signed the final insurance documents, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, a sense of personal power and self-respect. For 3 decades, I'd given away everything I had, piece by piece, until I was left with nothing but hope that my daughter would someday appreciate my sacrifices. Now, I was taking back control of my own life and my own legacy. The eviction notice was the final legal document, and somehow the most satisfying to sign. Tom had prepared it according to state tenant laws, giving Rebecca exactly what was required and nothing more. This 30-day notice to vacate will be delivered by certified mail and sheriff's deputy, so she can't claim she never received it, Tom explained. How long do I have before she figures out the full extent of what's happened? The bank account closure took effect an hour ago. She'll know about that as soon as her next automatic payment is declined, probably tonight or tomorrow morning. The eviction notice will be delivered tomorrow afternoon. The insurance and will changes won't be apparent unless she specifically inquires, but the financial reality will hit her immediately. I signed the eviction notice with steady hands. My daughter would be homeless in 30 days, financially cut off within hours, and completely removed from my estate permanently. Some people might call that cruel. I called it justice. Tom gathered all the paperwork into a thick folder. Landon, everything is legal and enforceable. The recording provides clear justification for all these actions, but I have to ask one final time. Are you absolutely certain about this? Once Rebecca discovers what's happened, there won't be any going back. Hospital discharge came faster than expected. Dr. Martinez was pleased with my recovery progress, but I think my improved mental state had as much to do with healing as the cardiac medications. Mr. Hamilton, you seem much more at peace today than when you first arrived. That's important for heart health. Emotional stress can significantly impact physical recovery. If only he knew. Taking control of my life for the first time in decades was better medicine than anything they could prescribe. I'd already arranged for a small 1-bedroom apartment across town. Nothing fancy, but clean and quiet and completely mine. No joint accounts, no shared utilities, no legal entanglements with ungrateful relatives. Mrs. Patterson helped me move my belongings, which fit easily into her small car. 30 years of giving everything away had left me with remarkably little, but what I had was meaningful. Catherine's wedding ring, our photo albums, some books, my work clothes that still smelled faintly of honest labor. Landon, are you absolutely sure about all this? Mrs. Patterson asked as we loaded the last box. Family is family, you know. I paused, thinking about that phrase that people use to excuse inexcusable behavior from relatives. Mrs. Patterson, family means people who show up when you need them. People who care whether you live or die. I've learned that blood relation doesn't automatically create family, and family doesn't automatically come from blood relation. She hugged me with surprising strength for someone in her 70s. Well, you've got family in me. Your new apartment has my phone number, and I expect regular visits. Setting up my new place felt like starting over at 68, but in the best possible way. I arranged my few pieces of furniture, hung Catherine's picture in the living room, set up a reading corner by the window where natural light would be good for my aging eyes. That first evening in my new apartment, I cooked dinner for one without any sadness. For the first time in years, solitude felt like choice rather than abandonment. I thought about applying for volunteer work at Children's Hospital, maybe mentoring young people who would actually appreciate guidance and investment. People who understood the value of generosity rather than simply expecting it as their birthright. My old phone, the one Rebecca had been ignoring for months, sat silent on my kitchen counter. I'd kept it just to see how long it would take her to notice that her financial world was collapsing. Rebecca called 47 times that first day. I know the exact number because I counted. The old phone sat on my kitchen counter, buzzing and ringing constantly from Thursday afternoon until Friday morning. I didn't answer any of the calls, but I listened to every voicemail message. The evolution of Rebecca's panic was almost fascinating to observe. The first few calls were confused. Daddy, my debit card isn't working for some reason. Can you call me back and help me figure out what's wrong? Then frustrated, Daddy, I went to the bank and they said our joint account is closed. That has to be some kind of mistake. Please call me so we can fix this. Then panicked, Daddy, what's going on? The bank manager said you closed our account yesterday. Why would you do that without telling me? Please call me back right away. Then desperate, Daddy, my mortgage payment bounced. My car payment bounced. Mark is freaking out because our credit cards are being declined. Where are you? Mrs. Patterson says you moved out? Please, I need to talk to you immediately. And finally, angry, what the hell did you do? Call me back right now, or I'm going to come find you. Friday afternoon brought the sheriff's deputy to Rebecca's door with the eviction notice. I positioned myself across the street in my car, not to gloat, but to witness the moment when Rebecca understood the full extent of her situation. She looked frantic when she answered the door. Hair uncombed, designer clothes wrinkled from sleeping in them, face puffy from crying, or stress, or both. This was not the polished image she maintained on social media. I watched her read the notice right there on the front porch, and I could see her legs buckle as the reality hit her. She sat down hard on the steps, holding the legal papers with shaking hands. Mark's BMW wasn't in the driveway. According to Mrs. Patterson's neighborhood intelligence network, he'd packed a suitcase and left Thursday night when the first automatic payments started bouncing. Apparently, an investment banker's interest in marriage diminished rapidly when the money disappeared. Rebecca spent an hour on her phone, calling lawyers, college friends, anyone who might help her understand what was happening. But the law was clear, and Tom's documentation was thorough. She'd never owned any of it. Not the house, not the money, not the security she'd taken for granted. She'd been living on my charity for years without realizing it. Sunday morning brought the call I'd been both dreading and anticipating. This time I answered, Daddy? Her voice was small, broken, nothing like the confident woman who dismissed my heart attack 4 days earlier. Hello, Rebecca. Daddy, please, you have to help me understand what's happening. Why did you close our account? Why do I have to move out of my house? I don't understand any of this. It was never your house, Rebecca, and you made it very clear that I'm not a priority in your life. What do you mean? Of course you're my priority. You're my father. Without saying anything, I played the recording through my phone speaker. 3 minutes and 27 seconds of my daughter choosing a birthday party over her father's life-threatening emergency. The silence after the recording ended lasted almost 2 minutes. Daddy, I can explain that. It was complicated. Mark's entire family was there from out of state, and we'd spent so much money on the party, and I thought you were just being dramatic because you always worry about your health. And Rebecca, I was dying. The doctor told you I might not survive the night. Nothing else should have mattered. But you're fine now. You survived. Everything worked out okay. I survived despite you, not because of you. Do you understand the difference? Another long silence. Daddy, please. I'm sorry. I made a terrible mistake, but you can't punish me forever for one bad decision. This isn't punishment, Rebecca. These are consequences. There's a fundamental difference. What do you want me to do? How can I fix this? You can't fix it. You can't undo choosing champagne over your father's life. You can't take back years of treating me like an ATM instead of a person. You can't change the fact that you've become someone I don't recognize. Daddy, I love you. I know I haven't shown it well, but I do love you. Love isn't words, Rebecca. Love is actions. Love is showing up when someone needs you. Love is caring whether the person who sacrificed everything for you lives or dies. So what happens now? Are you really going to let me lose everything? You're not losing anything that was ever really yours. You're just learning what belongs to whom. I hung up the phone and turned it off completely. 2 weeks later, a 12-page letter arrived at Mrs. Patterson's apartment. Rebecca had apparently figured out how to reach me through my former neighbor. 12 pages of apologies, explanations, justifications, and promises to change. 12 pages of everything I'd wanted to hear for years. Too late. The letter was desperate, rambling, full of excuses about stress and Mark's influence and social pressure. She promised to be better, to call more often, to include me in her life. She swore she'd learned her lesson and would never take me for granted again. But buried in all the apologies was a phrase that showed me Rebecca still didn't understand. I know I can't undo that one mistake, but please don't let one bad moment destroy 30 years of love. One mistake. She still saw it as one isolated incident rather than the culmination of years of selfishness and entitlement. The phone call during my heart attack wasn't an anomaly. It was the natural result of who she'd become, someone who put her own convenience above everything else, including her father's life. I read her letter once, then filed it away with all the other legal documents from this whole mess. My response was considerably shorter. 2 sentences. I gave you everything except self-respect. You'll have to earn that yourself. I attached a copy of the hospital recording and mailed it to her workplace, because Rebecca needed to understand that her choice had witnesses, that her abandonment of her dying father was documented and undeniable. Some people learn from consequences. Others just learn to hide their selfishness better. Time would tell which category Rebecca fell into, but it was no longer my responsibility to find out. The Children's Hospital had sent me a lovely thank you note for my planned estate donation, along with photos of some of the young patients my future gift would help. Kids with cancer, kids with heart defects, kids whose parents slept in hospital chairs for weeks rather than miss a single moment of their child's treatment. Real family, real love, real priorities. That's where Catherine's and my life savings would go now, to help families who understood what mattered and parents who would never choose a party over their child's medical crisis. I felt good about that decision. Catherine would have approved. Today marks 6 months since I walked out of that hospital and reclaimed my life. I'm living quietly in my small apartment, volunteering at Children's Hospital twice a week, and finally sleeping peacefully for the first time in years. Rebecca has tried to contact me occasionally, birthday cards, Christmas texts, emails through mutual acquaintances, all asking for forgiveness, for reconciliation, for restoration of our financial relationship. I read them all. I answer none. The house was sold last month. Rebecca had to move out after 30 days when she couldn't afford the utilities or property taxes. The proceeds went directly into my estate, earmarked for the Children's Hospital. Word through the neighborhood network is that Mark officially ended their engagement when the money dried up, and Rebecca has moved back in with college roommates while working double shifts to rebuild her finances. She's learning, perhaps for the first time in her adult life, what I knew for 30 years about working hard just to survive. Good. Hard work builds character, and Rebecca could use some character building. Mrs. Patterson visits twice a week, and we've become the family we both needed. She tells me about her garden and her books. I help her with household repairs and grocery shopping. We watch old movies together and share simple dinners that cost less than Rebecca used to spend on a single bottle of wine. Catherine's picture sits on my mantel now, and I talk to her in the evenings. I tell her I kept my promise. I did give Rebecca everything, every opportunity to become a person worthy of love and respect, every advantage that money could buy and sacrifice could provide. What Rebecca chose to become with those opportunities was beyond my control. The recording is still on my phone. 3 minutes and 27 seconds that changed both our lives forever. I keep it not as a weapon, but as a reminder that I am worth more than bad timing. I am worth more than being someone's last priority, and I finally learned to act like it. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let people face the consequences of their choices, even if that person is your daughter.